The first out, Mike Trout at the moment, just, I mean, it's getting really almost tragic at this point, right? Like he's just, the guy is really struggling to stay healthy. He's played less than 100 games 4 out of the last 5 seasons. I guess if you want to call 2020, tough, but let's say 3 out of the last 4, he's been under 100 games. It's just, and it seems to be a relatively steady decline in his production. He's 32 years old. He's, like we said, he's on the wrong side of 30. We didn't have much expectations for the Angels anyway, right? But this was a team that I think you and I could both agree, especially on your end, because you are now an Ohtani fanboy, right, over there in Los Angeles. But but they made the mistake of not selling Ohtani last year, right? They made the mistake of not dumping anybody on the roster, and they not only did they not sell, but they bought. They really tried to shed, or I shouldn't say shed. They kind of thinned out their farm system even more to try to get better last year, and it came around to bite them. So,
yeah, Mike,
they finally get the hint.
Artie Moreno's an idiot. It's just the reality of the situation. Their owner is an idiot, and so he's too prideful to sell so many times where they could. It's part of why that team hasn't been any good for a long time. They haven't really made any effort to kind of overhaul things. They look, even before Rendon got hurt, why are you're rolling that guy out there every day like he's ready to contribute? Think about it this way: if Anthony Rendon is on any other roster in baseball, save maybe the Rockies or the A's or the White Sox, right? But if he's on other rosters that are considered kind of in that mid to lower tier category, like the Angels, those teams are not going to keep rolling him out there. You're not going to learn anything new about him. You know what he is. He's just eating money and taking up space. On the Trout thing, look, you never like to see a guy get hurt. Obviously, I feel terrible for him. The interview that he gave the other day was heartbreaking. You could tell he was borderline in tears. I do want to revisit the fact that this is exactly why we smashed the unders on him preseason, right?
Yep.
Every year, and you could do this in any sport. Do it in basketball, do it in football. You should never bet a preseason player prop over. You just should not ever do it, and this is why. Trout was off to a torrid start. 10 homers already. Granted, a hilariously low number of RBIs given the number of homers that he had. And then it all can go away. And now under 30.5 homers, under 93.5 RBIs, both of which I gave out on the first episode of the show during the Hot Corner, are both looking likely to cash. And this is why we do what we do on the unders. It's the only way you should look. And so, I feel terrible for him. It's the same thing I did with Byron Buxton last year. I won the biggest bet I ever made in my life on Buxton under 30.5 homers last year. But yeah, I hope he gets well soon. And if you didn't tell me on that bet, maybe this will be a little bit of a lesson as to why I made it.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, when you were explaining it then, it made a lot of sense, right? Because again, just given the track record of recent years, we all know what Mike Trout is when he's healthy, right? Nobody's going to argue about what Mike Trout is when he's healthy. And again, even if the best of Mike Trout is behind him, like you said before, this season we even saw, even if it was going to be one of these seasons, because he, listen, when he went down, he was hitting 220, right? So the batting average was obviously in the lower part of, it was low for him. But again, it was early in the year, laughable amount of RBIs, 10 home runs, only 14 ribbies, which is incredible. But I don't know what. Let me ask you this. What is Mike Trout now? Is Mike Trout still one of those players that we can consider among the best, or is that time behind him? And how long has it been behind him, do you think?
I think Mike Trout is still one of the best players in the game when he's healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not that concerned with the batting average if you're putting up double-digit home runs in April.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So to me, like, he's still shown us that when he's healthy, he's elite. Um, so I'm not too concerned about it, but there's a little bit of like a Clayton Kershaw-ness to it where, Kershaw the last few years, when he's actually been out there,
Yeah.
he's continuing to put up great numbers. But you're just watching a player kind of wear down a little bit, right? Like you're seeing guys who are just, well, here's another 80 games, right? Like I hope they come at the right time. And so I feel for him because the ability is still there, the drive is still there. But this is kind of what happens to guys as they get older. I hope he can put together a couple more healthy years. I'd like to see him do it.
Yeah.
I'd also like to see him pull his head out of the sand on this whole I'm going to win an Anaheim thing and realize that ownership's not going to let that happen. But that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Angels do spend money. I mean, it's not like their wallets are not open. They have a track record of spending money, but it just feels like none of their deals work out for them. I mean, Albert Pujols didn't work out for them. Josh Hamilton didn't work out for them. CJ Wilson didn't work out for them. I mean, we're talking about guys that when they signed them, I mean, and this is years ago now, but when they signed them, Rendon, add him to the list as well. They just don't perform there. They just don't. So
yeah, I mean, look, part of it is the player development there hasn't been good.
No.
It doesn't seem like players get great coaching there. They're very much a Mickey Mouse organization. Like that's how they're viewed around the game, and for good reason. Like it's an organization that from top to bottom does not do things the right way. Like a few years ago, I was down there for Angels Twins. I was watching the Twins because, like I think I've said on the show before, one of my good buddies works for them, and they had a rain delay down there, and like they couldn't figure out how to get the tarp onto the field, and they ended up having to postpone the next day's game because they could not figure out how to keep their field dry from it raining.
Wow.
Like it's an organization that from the players on the field to the front office to the staff, top to bottom, it's not run well. It's like the Rockies have a little bit of that stink to them too, where it's just like an organization from top to bottom that's not run well. And it's not surprising that they sign the wrong guys as they're declining. It's just kind of their identity as a franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shame. And I hope you're right too, because like Mike Trout, you can obviously see the loyalty he has for Anaheim, but he's a Jersey boy. You know what I mean? Like he's from the East Coast. Like you're telling me, I mean, and there were some rumors circling through this offseason that I don't think ever really had much merit to them as much as anything else. But like, are you telling me that like if the Phillies were interested, you don't think he'd want to go? I just think that like there's a line to that, right?
I mean, he didn't sign there when he had the chance, and I think they were in on him. So it's loyalty to the point that you can no longer argue that you care about winning above all else. And that's the unfortunate thing is I think he does want to win. He just too badly wants to win in Anaheim.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of some misplaced sense of like, well, I'm going to be that guy that stays in the same place because that's what I liked in athletes when I grew up. And it's like, no, dude, like you got to do what's best for you, man. Like, could you imagine that Philly team right now if they had Trout in that lineup? I mean, they're already a fun team to watch. They'd be really fun to watch.
I know. They'd win every World Series ever. It would make me.
I don't know about that, but it'd be fun.
I'm exaggerating, but again, it's just crazy how good that lineup would be.